What's up, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Borg Queen Explained. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the Borg Queen in Star Trek Picard Season 3, and I want to address some of the things that I not only know and that I believe about the Borg Queen. This is part 1 of the Borg Queen Explained. I've left it open for a part 2 in case we received any criticism or corrections or feedback from maybe Terry Matalas himself or the creators of Star Trek Season Picard Season 3, Episode 10, or any of you with feedback in the comments down below. First off, Alice Krige obviously voiced the Borg Queen once again here. However, visually they used Jane Seymour, Jane Edwin, I think it is, Seymour. And she was the stunt double of Annie Warshall, who sadly and tragically passed away. And I thought it was a good idea. You know what I mean? Somebody that looks familiar. And quite honestly, Jane looks very much like almost a mix of Annie Warshall and Alice Krige together in a way. So she fits pretty well as the Borg Queen here. And then they also had Alice's voice doing the voiceovers. Now, the Borg Queen is kind of like down on her luck, believe it or not. You wouldn't know that because this season, the bad guys seem so menacing and the plan is so well done that many people are saying that it's a little bit underwhelming at the end of Picard with how quickly they end up sort of defeating the Borg Queen and how pathetic she is, and maybe that even she's kind of bad. She's bad at her job, bad at her plan. Her plan doesn't make sense. But when you realize the Queen at this point is desperate. These are the Borg, and this is the Borg Queen from more of the Voyager TNG time, but certainly the last interactions she had were with Voyager, and they're decimated. She's consuming her own young and her own Borg allies because that's how desperate she is. I choose to think of her as kind of a crazy cat lady at this point. I heard that mentioned somewhere else, but that is the exact vibe. She's kind of crazy, and she's all by herself, and she's desperate, which makes a lot of sense. First of all, one of the biggest complaints is, how did no one notice the Borg cube stuck right there in Jupiter? How did they miss it? Well, it could be that the Borg cube did not emerge from Jupiter until the plan was ready to take place, and at that point, they had already assimilated, or the changelings had already taken over Starfleet at the point where no questions would be asked after that point anyway. So we don't really know that, but that's what you can assume logically. And also the interference on Jupiter and the fact that the Borg cube itself is massive, but also capable of scrambling signals and potentially hiding. So that complaint to me is sort of null and void. Now, there are Jupiter Station and some other things there, but they could be completely controlled by changelings, so therefore I'm not questioning that either. Also, why does the Borg Queen let Picard in? They basically invite them onto the ship. And Picard even says, "You don't let the wolves in if you don't want them," whatever he says. So basically Picard is saying, well, this is an invitation. Ever since I heard it was an invitation, to me, it was Jack that was letting them in. Jack had some sort of control over this. And I believe that that's what it was originally, because it was a sign from Jack. Because otherwise, people said, why would the Borg Queen let them in and let this take place? She's stupid. Even if it is Jack, it's still happening on the Borg Queen's watch, essentially. But I don't believe the Borg Queen is that powerful. I think what a lot of people are missing is the Borg Queen is decimated. She's desperate. She's psychotic and crazy. One of the reasons the Borg Queen is so crazy is because she's really been disassociated from a lot of the collective. She hasn't had the connection that she's been looking for. She's been left on her own to rot and is now eating her own. That's how desperate she is, but she's also crazy. So even if the Borg Queen is the one that allowed Picard to get onto the ship, you could understand it because she's not thinking very logically. She's not thinking logically because she's losing her mind, having not being connected to all the Borg. She's connected in a way, but not in a way that's traditional for her and the Borg. At least that's the way I see it. Also, people complain that Jack shouldn't be in Starfleet because he's a murderer now. He killed all those people because he wanted to go to the Borg Queen. Well, I don't believe Jack made that decision solely from his own brain. It is somewhat similar to Girardi in season 1 of Picard, kind of killing because something was implanted in her to manipulate her mind. It is a little bit like that, I will say that. Jack's mind is manipulated. He has the transceiver in his brain. It's not that Jack wants to go confront the Borg Queen. It's more that his mind is forcing him to do it. It's a drive that's been implanted in him to return to the signal, or to return to the homeworld, or to return to the mother, or to return to the Queen. Similar in a way to the Matrix. There's a lot of things from the Matrix that are like this, returning to the source. So Jack is driven almost prematurely and forcibly to the source that is the Borg Queen for the connection that he's looking for, because that's built into his brain. Now, when this is all concluded, basically what ends up happening is, despite all of the connection that Jack has been looking for, driven to, and programmed for, despite all that, when he gets there and is connected, he does experience the bliss and the connection that he's been looking for. However, Picard's love for his son and the connection that Picard makes with Jack outweighs the connection to the Borg and the collective that Jack feels. That's why it's powerful, because despite him being pre-programmed to return for this connection, Picard is able to make a human connection with him that's stronger, that allows him to break free from the collective. And I assume later this connection is taken out of the brain of Jack, so this couldn't happen again. So he won't have that drive to be connected to the Borg anymore once this is all said and done. They don't show that in the episode, but that's what I would imagine would happen logically, but we don't really need to see it on TV. The Borg Queen's plan is convoluted, many people say. I agree, it is a bit convoluted, but the reason it's convoluted and doesn't work out too well is because, once again, she's desperate, dying, eating her own, crazy, and she's so desperate that the only way she's able to do anything is by reaching out to the changelings, and a specific group of changelings that have a massive hatred for the Federation, and that's why she's able to reach out in the face projection, which is more the collective speaking through a facial projection to Vadic. Would I have liked that explained a little bit more? Yes, but I totally understand what happened. There's been some kind of agreement between the two. The Borg Queen wouldn't be able to execute anything she wanted to do without Vadic and the changelings, because she's sort of helpless on the Borg cube, and dying, desperate, crazy, and she has no other way to operate other than to reach out for help with the changelings. So once the changelings are gone, if not for that drive that Jack had to return to the source, she would be screwed. And quite honestly, all of this chasing and all of this reaction for Jack eventually is what I think ends up driving him halfway to believing he needs to sacrifice himself. But what he doesn't realize is sacrificing himself actually plays right into the hands of the Borg Queen, which that is one thing you could criticize, is that maybe they should have been smarter to lock Jack down from the beginning and in a better way, because he won't be able to stop the urge to visit the Borg Queen. But they should have known, and he should have known, that returning to her would be exactly what she wants, which could kill everybody or get everybody killed. So there is a little bit of something there, but I believe the reason why he goes there is because he's not really in his own right mind, because the real Jack wouldn't do that. I think if Jack wasn't under the influence of the Borg Queen and he knew that he could end up having to return there, it would kill everybody, he would actually maybe take his own life immediately or request to be subdued in some way. So, we've explained the changelings. We understand now that the reason why this Borg Queen is somewhat underwhelming and not as powerful as you believe is because she isn't. And once you realize that, it makes more sense. And I think pretty much all of that makes sense. Whether the Borg Queen let them onto the ship herself, let them onto the Borg cube herself, said, oh, let them in, let them come, I want Locutus to see. And she does say that she wants them to see, witness what I'm about to do. And maybe that's stupid on her part, but once again, it's explained by that she's not in her right mind. She's longing for connection and to connect with people in any way possible, even if it's to watch them feel pain or suffer. So she's not she's not the smartest person right now. She's out of her mind and delusional. And even before, when she tried to control Data in First Contact, she believed she could control Data. And, so she's the Borg Queen and the collective themselves are very overconfident. They've always been that way. The Borg, even as a collective, have been that way. You'll love, you'll be assimilated, you'll service us, you'll be part of a collective, you'll evolve. They just assume you're going to love it. So I think right here so far we've kind of addressed all the criticisms about the Borg Queen, and this is how I feel about the Borg Queen and what was trying to be conveyed by the writers and by the story. Do I have things wrong with what I just said, or am I wrong with some of the things I just said? Potentially I am, but I haven't spoken to anybody. But if anybody has any questions, comments, or follow-ups, leave it in the comments section down below with what you think I got wrong, what you think I missed or that I didn't talk about. And in part 2 of the Borg Queen Explained, I will get into that. And if anybody that made the show happens to see this, feel free to reach out to me and explain, and I would be happy to update it in my part 2, the Borg Queen Explained. This is Star Trek Late Night. Guys, if you like what I'm doing here, I need your help, because this is one of my other channels, and it doesn't make any money. And although I work a lot of jobs and life is crazy, we always could use funding to keep this channel going. We have about a 6-month test to see how well this channel can do or provide anything for me. If it does, then we'll keep it going. If not, it may be another pilot that dies out in the night. Feel free. Right now, we don't have Super Chats available yet. We don't have Super Thanks available yet. It's going to take about 20 or 30 days for it to get approved. So in the meantime, if you want to send me support, you can do it at paypal.me/Joe Cronin Show, paypal.me/Joe Cronin Show, or become a patron of my Patreon, where you can get tons of behind-the-scenes stuff and, thousands of hours of podcasts. But on my Patreon, it's more of a Howard Stern 90s vibe. So if that's not your thing and vulgarity isn't your thing, you may not like my patreon.com/Joe Cronin Show bonus content. But if you're somebody who misses the old shock jock days, you may enjoy my corrupted podcast on Patreon. I hope you guys had a good rest of the day. Please leave a comment, like, and share this everywhere for me. It will help. And I'll catch you in part 2 of the Borg Queen Explained.